Alright folks, let's take a closer look and go into more details on the SMV CC-64, the Vipera, the premium tier 8 Italian tank destroyer. So from our preview yesterday, we already know that this is practically a heavy tank disguised as a tank destroyer, but it looks fairly modern like a Leopard 1 or Leopard 2 with a large turret, thick mantlet, and armored front, so takes a lot of punishment. It's a assault heavy tank-esque of a tank destroyer, so it's like the 𝘊𝘓𝘶𝘯𝘊𝘓𝘶 or the T-28s or the Turtles. So play it aggressively, play it with like heavy tanks and take city corners. That's what you should do, but it looks fairly modern with not that big of a cupola. Actually, the cupola is pretty small, so lack of a obvious weak spot makes this vehicle pretty intimidating to new players who are not versed or well studied upon it. So you will surprise a lot of players with how thick your armor is and you take shots. But it does have a gimmick with the autoloader, so it is not as bursty but more consistent. So you shoot every 6 seconds compared to every 2, but you have a faster reload with the whole clip. So that is the trick or the gimmick. Well, all Italian tanks have gimmicks with their autoloaders or auto reloaders. The tank destroyers are no different, but it's a premium, makes more credit and crew XP, and it was designed with partnership with Western Germany or mostly Europe. So, alright, crew of 4, commander, gunner, driver, loader. So you should expect all the Italian tank destroyers to share about the same crew loadout. So that's good. Autoloader for the 120, special gimmick, 6 seconds between each shot, so not as bursty of a gun, but not as long of a reload for the clip, so that's nice. Accuracy could be better, DPM could be better, but hey, it's an autoloader. Wonder which. It's an assault gun of a tank destroyer. You don't need that much accuracy. So view range is crap, 360. And engine power is somewhat lacking, so it's like a turtle of a tank destroyer, as you would expect. Radio range is slightly below average, so meh. But let's go into way more details and take a very closer look. So AP round, 220 for the 120mm gun, 400 alpha, DPM about 2000, 100% crew gives you about 0.42 accuracy, 2.88 seconds of aim time, 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 elevation, 45 degrees to each side, and somewhat slow of a turret traverse, but then again, it's a pseudo turret, so it's large, in charge, takes a while. Takes about 35 seconds to reload the whole clip, only 6 seconds between each shot, and there are 5 rounds in the clip, so you have 2000 DPM with all the 5 shots of the 120. Now let's go into more details about the gun. So what I noticed that is interesting, to say the least, is that it's not exactly 10 degrees of gun depression at the front. It's only about 7 or 7.2. So somehow they have skewed the leveling of the gun, where you only get 10 degrees of gun depression to the left side of the vehicle. So the port side of the vehicle gets the stated 10 degrees of gun depression, but it only has 20 elevation on the port side, whereas on the starboard side, the right side of the vehicle, you get less gun depression to about 4.3 degrees, but you get more elevation at about 25.6. So it is still about 30 degrees difference from the elevation to depression, but the angling of the gun or leveling of the gun is kinda off for some reason. So hopefully that won't like troll you when you try to take a shot and try to go hull down and you realize you only have less than 5 degrees of gun depression, so less than a Russian tank in terms of depressing the gun. So it's like playing with some of the Russian tanks like the K91. Even though it has 9 degrees of gun depression, it's only at the sides. You can take a look, but or some of the German ones too, like the Waffenträgers, Panzer IV. You have about 7 at the sides and only about 4 at the front or something, 5 at the front. So it's kind of troll-ish with this vehicle. So be aware of that special, I guess, characteristic. Shell velocity for the 120 is average, less than 1,000 meters per second. So you still have to lead your shot, but if you're fighting close range, not going to be a problem. Carries 50 rounds, so that's good. Shell cost for the actual average alpha is not that bad. If we're going to compare it to something like, well, let's use a premium heavy tank for that matter, about the same alpha. Where's the T-34? So costs a little bit less than a T-34, about 100 credit less. So you actually make a little bit more credits, but you don't have as much penetration. So, okay. Kind of a trade-off, weird trade-off. Let's see with the Basante in terms of the alpha. Well, you do pay more, but you get more alpha, as expected. So slightly above average, very slightly compared to the T-34 and stuff, but small detail. Going back to the Vipera. Velocity, average, 50 rounds. Potential damage is good, so don't worry about spamming too much shot, but then again, you have to wait for the reload, so that's a drawback. Dispersion while moving is kinda bad, but not the worst. 0.25. It's like a heavy tank, for that matter. Slightly below average for a heavy tank, but moving, the traverse, and turret is actually pretty good. 0.1. That is better than some of the medium tanks, like the Pershing. Pershing is like 0.12, so snapshotting is actually pretty decent with this vehicle if you can mitigate the accuracy of the thing. So accuracy is 0.42. You will want to try enhanced gunner sights to decrease that amount. So snapshotting will be a little bit better and poking around corners. But let's take a look at the gold shell. Gold shell is APCR. Costs more, obviously, and shell velocity is not as fast as you would like. I would like about 1,300 or more meters per second, but that's about the average. Penetration is 264 millimeters. It could be better, but this is a heavy tank gun. I mean, it is not exactly high penetrating like the T-34 or the Löwe, so not about 300 millimeters of pen. But then again, it's better than something like a Turtle or something, or the TS5. Yeah, TS5 has like only 250, right? Let's see, TS5 gold shell 2. Actually, gold shell for the TS5 is about 270 or 280. So your gold shell pen is about the same as normal AP pen for the TS5. Oof, I mean, it's not as... It's workable, but don't depend on it. That's what I'm trying to say. And you have to load a whole clip of it, so it's going to be expensive spamming too much shots or too much clip of the APCR round. Alright, moving on. High explosive is surprisingly high pen. 120mm of pen for 515 alpha, which dramatically increased the DPM, dramatically. But you have to load a whole clip of it. 5 rounds of it. So even though it has high pen, you have to penetrate 5 times to make it work, which on average you'll penetrate like 1 shell out of the 5 and you get like 100 alpha for the rest. Which is not that great, but it's not a slow high velocity or high explosive velocity. It's workable. So overall the gun is okay. It's a heavy tank gun, but you don't have the actual liberty of switching before the APCR round or the high explosive round before you want to engage different targets because of the autoloader clip. So it's not exactly viable in terms of spamming high explosive as something like the ship TVP Tankgeschwader, the Czech Tankgeschwader, if when you see it. but you cannot exactly switch quickly enough, so that's a downside, but you could make it work with that much ammo in the ammo rack, so that's nice. Alright, moving back towards the armor of this thing. So it has to depend on armor, even though it doesn't have that much mobility. So 1400 health, like a heavy tank, or lighter heavy tank at tier 8. Usually the average heavy tanks have about 1600 health to 1500 health, so slightly below average for a heavy tank assault gun of a tank destroyer. But armor at the front is 210 and 275 for the turret. We already covered the basis or basics for the armor, but let's do a preview. Oops, there it is. So front of the turret, don't even think about it. It's about 300mm effective, slope upwards, so no. Shoot the upper plate, it's about 250 or 240-ish. So still pretty decent for a tier 8. And that will bounce most of the normal shells from medium tanks at tier 9 too, unless they're using a L7 or something. But middle of the hull is 240, sloped downwards to about 280, so don't think about it. It does have a weak belly plate of only 30mm, so that lower belly plate is like a STRV-S1. So like the Swedish tanks, if you have a decent caliber gun that's above 90mm, you'll overmatch the lower plate. But the same goes for the top of the turret. The top of the turret does not have a weak spot like a large cupola tumor or something, but it's only 40mm. So that is like a STRV tank or S-tanks. So at tier 9, you could expect to bounce the allies 120mm, like on the Conqueror or the M103s, but if you're facing Russian guns like 122s or German 128s, sometimes the 130 from the Skoda T56, it'll overmatch automatically. Doesn't matter which angle you have it, doesn't matter if you're gun depressed and hull down, they'll overmatch the top of your roof and automatically pin. So that's not good. Just be aware of the opponents and their caliber of gun, but most of the time you should be fine. You do have a crevice between the turret and the hull, which is only about 40, so same goes with the shot trap as well as the 3 caliber rule. You will get shot trapped and get pinned and you'll be pissed off. But then again, if you're gun depressed and hull down, the crevice is not as prominent if you're not hull down. So try to go hull down all the time. But like I said, with the firepower, you have a weird gun depression thing, so just be aware of the nuances playing with this vehicle. It does have 100mm of side armor, only above the tracks. It's only 60 between the tracks, so you could side scrape, but don't depend on it. You could beta a few shots, but still, if you're side scraping, might as well just point the front towards your enemies. The only weak spot is lower plate and the crevice and top of the roof, but there are no tumors, so just go with the front. Don't side scrape, and you'll expose the cheeks of the vehicle, cheeks of the hull mostly. 140 to about 200mm effective. If they shoot the road wheel, it's only about 140. So don't side scrape that much. You don't need to depend on that. Top of the engine deck, 20. Top of the roof, 30. So high explosive from artillery hurts, and it's somewhat of a large target too. So I presume if you get hit like right here from artillery shells, you get a damage ammo rack, or even get exploded with a one shot, which is not great. So safe stowage is a must for such a large compartment in the back of the turret for ammo. But overall, it's still pretty decent armor if you're considering that this is somewhat like a medium tank. It's not big, bulky like a M103 or Conqueror in terms of height. So yeah, I mean, armor is decent. Just be aware of the nuances with the overmatching of the 3 caliber rule. And let's take a look at mobility. So mobility wise, it's 11.7 horsepower per ton ratio for 51 tons. It's alright. It's not the greatest, it's not the slowest, but it's only 32 kilometers per hour top speed, 12 reverse, and slow hull traverse, so 18.7. It doesn't turn around pretty quick, so make sure you have like clutch braking for your driver to help that out. But terrain resistance is 1.05 for hard, 1.15 for medium. Not bad, pretty good. And soft is average, so it's not terrible, like 3 plus. So effective top speed is always 32. Not for soft terrain, it's more like 20, so don't go into swamps, but it shouldn't be as bad as something like a Yak Tiger 88 or something, but it's alright. It's slightly faster, I think, than a turtle. Has better terrain resistance than a turtle. Not as much horsepower per ton ratio, but obviously better top speed. A lot better top speed. It's a slightly faster turtle. Slightly faster. And for the rest of the stats, camo is average for a tank destroyer, but this is more of a heavy tank, so you'll be spotted. Don't depend on the camo unless you're driving across a field and try to prevent side shots into your side armor. So, and still put a camo on. You should be a little bit more safe compared to heavy tanks, but don't depend on it. And view range is kind of garbage, 360 meters. So that's 10 more than a premium Russian heavy tank. So not the best. And radio is below average, but still workable. So overall, I will rate this thing like a... Oof. I mean, it's somewhat gimmicky in terms of the performance. Now, if you have mastered this special autoloader, then I think this will be a very good gun. If you master the timing of it and when to reload and when to just wait out the 5-round clip. But would I play this vehicle over something like a TS5 or Turtle 1? Or the Bisonte or Carnarvon Action X? DPM is not the best, so you cannot put stuff on it. I would still think it's suitable if you know how to play it well. So there is a skill gap question in the whole situation. So if you have the skill of managing the autoloader and managing the gun depression and angling the tank, hiding the armor and hiding the roof and stuff, then it's like a 6.5 out of 10. It's a very decent premium tank for that matter. You have the additional armor. And we all went nuts with something like the Object 252U with like a tier 10's armor. This thing has a lot of armor for a tier 8, like unheard of compared to something like a 𝘓𝘓𝘓 or something. 𝘓𝘓𝘓 has weak spots, has a crappy superstructure, only 200 millimeters. This thing that has 300 millimeters for the turret. Totally different, but it does have a few weak spots and stuff. Let's try to configure the equipment. So I would think, to help out with everything, you will want improved aiming for the firepower slot. So this will help with the accuracy a little bit better now. 0.42 to 0.39 makes it a little bit more workable, I guess. You should have vents for survivability. So this will be unlocked with modifications or field mods. And I would think view range is debatable compared to turbocharger. You will likely be in towns, so this will cut down the view range of everybody, where having more speed and maneuverability is a lot more beneficial than having more view range if you are in town. Now, if you're in some field map like Prokhorovka, then obviously you have to depend on your light tanks or medium tanks to spot for you. So when I think about it, you won't be spotting for yourself as often, so might as well put a turbocharger. That is debatable. So you could put turbocharger, you could put coated optics, but with turbocharger, a little bit better top speed and horsepower per ton ratio and traverse. So yeah, okay. Field mods, increase suspension. This thing will help with the hull traverse, even though it says minus +5 to hull traverse speed. So that's not the effective one. So I'll show you right now. So here is without any of the field mods for the first slot. If you put the increase to hull traverse, so this will only increase the hull traverse, effective traverse, to only about 16 on hard compared to the normal 17. So technically, it actually decrease your hull traverse. So special thanks to 𝘊𝘊𝘰𝘱𝘢𝘊𝘶, who pointed out a long time ago how this stuff works. But actually, when you help out with the terrain resistance, it actually helps with the actual hull traverse. So even though this says -5 to the hull traverse speed, yes, it does cut it down, but you do have better effective traverse because terrain resistance is a lot better. So this actually makes the vehicle turn faster, even though it says it cuts down on the hull traverse speed. So go with this one first. Second one, I would think aim speed or accuracy. Since you already have a garbage enough accuracy, I guess, might as well get better aim speed out of it. So with better aim speed, you'll jump back to 0.4 accuracy, but it's a lot faster to aim now. It's 2.6 compared to about 3. Well, if you cut it down to 3, you have better accuracy. And this one's debatable on your preference, but for me, since the accuracy is already crap, since I'm already fighting at a close range distance, and most of the time I won't be sniping across the map, I would think getting better aim time is a little bit more beneficial compared to getting better accuracy. But that's debatable. That's up to you. And finally, we have the, oh god, this is crap, ejector tuning, so you get better camo after you fire, but that doesn't do much. That's not going to do much. From 3.27% to 3.47%. That is not doing squat. So this is useless. Go with more view range. Always go with more view range. This will change from 3.27 on stationary percentage camo to 3.07. That's no different. That's negligible. That's super small. That doesn't matter. Peanuts. But you do have more view range. 375 compared to 368. So about 10 more meters of view range. 8 but or 7, but still I would rather have more view range. So basically with everything, with all the field mods and changing to survivability, putting on improved aim sight and vents and turbocharger. Whoops, that's Camonet. Turbocharger. So 36 kilometers per hour top speed is a lot better than 32, and horsepower per turn ratio is heavy tank still, but it's alright. Accuracy got buffed a little bit, and not as bad of a terrain resistance, so it's still garbage DPM, but then again, it's always been garbage DPM. Yeah, this is like a 6.5 out of 10. If you make it work with the autoloader, it's like a 6. I'm teeter-tottering on 6.5 or 6. I don't know how good the armor is. So if you're facing off against a bunch of noobs who just buy a premium tier 8, who doesn't know what the hell to do with it, well, obviously this thing is pretty good. Oh my god, 300 millimeters of armor at the front. How the hell do you kill this thing? Well, if you're having a large caliber gun, just overmatch the roof, like a IS-3 for that matter. So going to the IS-3 gun access port, it is only like 20 or something. Not as much as 30, but still pretty goddamn weak. IS-3, the infamous gun access port above the gun, or above the turret. This thing is only 20. Yep, it's only 20. Anything above a 60mm caliber gun will overmatch, like a 75 from a German tank, or 76 from an American tank. From a light tank too, you'll overmatch the gun access port. That's how the 3 caliber rule work. But for this vehicle, it's 40. So 40 is like a S tank for that matter, but if you're faced off in a heavy tank corner battle against something of a Russian design or German design, like a E75, they'll somewhat, yeah, they will overmatch your roof armor and automatically pin. So just be wary of that. So the only way to solve that problem or matchup is haul down and try to hide the top of your roof as well as the crevice, but try to prevent the lower shot to the lower plate too. 6.25. There we go. 6.25 out of 10. Not bad. I mean, compared to other premium tanks already in the game, 6.25. It is not crazy. It is not that crazy in what it does. If it has more pen, like 250mm base for the AP round, I will highly give it a 7.5. The penetration could be better, but then again, it's a heavy tank. So it's not like the ship TVP tank destroyer for the Czech. It does what it do pretty good. So for this vehicle, yes, it doesn't have armor. Yes, it is not as fast, but hell, this gun works. The 270mm of pen, and also goes with the high explosive too. High explosive also has way more alpha than it should have. So this gun just works. Fast to aim, good accuracy. It does what it do pretty well. So it does not try to be a assault gun of a tank destroyer. It's not like that. It doesn't try to be a light tank to scale for itself, even though it's pretty mobile too. Fast traverse and good for the turret as well as the hull. So this thing do what it does pretty good. Whereas the Vipera doesn't really do that well compared to some of the gun characteristic of a tank destroyer. But if this thing, like I said, if it has 250mm of pen with normal shell, I will obviously give it like a 7.5, maybe even 8 out of 10, just because how much credit you will make out of this thing without spamming the gold shell. But that's debatable. Well, there you go, folks. We spent like 30 minutes talking about a vehicle that could be changed on the common test or super test, one of which, mostly the common test. But for now, I guess we have the Italian tank destroyers to look forward to. The Minotauro at tier 10. So all the Power Rangers, the Vipera, the Panthera, you name it, the Rhinoceronte, all the Power Rangers. But thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you are more informed about killing this thing if you should face one. But for now, it's a pretty decent tank. Just needs a little bit more pen. Slightly. But thank you guys for watching. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.